Here is my biggest regret as a two-time multi-million-pound business owner, and it's not what you might expect. My name is Donnelly, and I founded and ran Verb Brands, which was a leading luxury digital marketing agency, and scaled the business and sold the business for 8 figures to private equity last year. I then went on to co-found the Lottie organization in the health space with my brother, and the business was valued at 9 figures just 2 years after launching. So how did I do it? How did I hire people for the first time? How did we win clients for the first time? How did we raise money for the first time? How did you sell an agency for millions of pounds? And how was a startup valued at 9 figures in just 2 years? So that's what I'll be doing here. I don't sell a course. I don't charge for anything. I'll be breaking down all of the different elements of building a legitimate business and a successful business and how to make money the right way. So my biggest regret is not documenting things, and that's what my free newsletter is for. Click the link in my bio for weekly business and personal advice from someone who's actually done it.
That video got almost 1 million views and thousands of likes just on Instagram. Imagine if with a single post you could bring that amount of attention to your business or project. In today's noisy, crowded marketplace, it's not enough to just have a great offering. To truly stand out and succeed, you need to build a powerful personal brand that establishes your expertise, credibility, and unique voice. But where do you even start? How do you grow an engaged following whilst also running your business? And how do you translate that audience into meaningful results? To unpack this crucial topic, I'm thrilled to be joined by my friend Chris Donnelly. Chris is the founder of 2 successful businesses, Verb and Lottie, but he's also built an enormous personal brand with over 35 million content views per week. Brands are lining up to work with him, and he's become one of the most sought-after voices in entrepreneurship. In our conversation, Chris shares his insights on the power of personal branding for founders. We dive into the nuts and bolts of how he grew his audience, including the importance of consistency, experimentation, and cultivating an authentic voice. But we also go deeper, discussing the mental challenges of putting yourself out there, how to partner with others to accelerate growth, and how to leverage your audience to drive business results. And it's true, building a strong personal brand isn't easy. It requires consistency, vulnerability, and a willingness to experiment. But here's the thing. This isn't just about follower counts or vanity metrics. As Chris puts it, everything is downstream from attention. The audience and credibility you build can be rocket fuel for your business, opening doors and creating once-in-a-lifetime opportunities. If you've been hesitating to prioritize your personal brand, consider this your wake-up call. Entrepreneurship is not for the faint of heart, and those who can cut through the noise and build real connection will have an undeniable edge. Okay, let's get on with it. My conversation with Chris Donnelly. Let's do this. Hey, Chris.
Hi, mate.
There is a saying, you're probably familiar with it. Everything is downstream from attention.
Yep.
What do you think of that?
I mean, it's certainly been true of my life so far. I think it's, I think if more people understood it, I think they would find life a bit easier. But it's definitely true. Like in every industry, in any job, and anything almost, like if you're the one who gets most of the attention, you'll get most of the opportunities. Which is true of like a graduate through to like middle management, or a CEO through to an entrepreneur. It's the same concept in pretty much everything.
Is there an inherent problem with that, where a lot of people on social media are just painful attention seekers who don't actually know very much about the world? Obviously not everyone, but so many don't know much about the world and are just constantly trying to hack attention, and it can all be very distracting because fundamentally people are quite confused about who to trust. So how do we square off the attention side to the trust side?
Well, I think that's more on the reader or the watcher. That will happen forever. That's happened forever. People will always be trying to, hijack people's attention and profit off people's interests and so forth. And you've seen that so much in the last couple of years with like prominent people like Tate, etc. But I mean, the thing I would always put out in my content is if you're going to read from someone or watch someone, make sure that you know what they've actually done and actually accomplished, and make sure you research the people that you're listening to. And I think if more people did that, I think that things would be generally better. But it is very easy to lie these days. And you have like a massive rise of unqualified experts, which obviously you're seeing a lot with people being exposed these days. So who to follow? Yeah, personal preference. I would say really put some time into researching who you follow.
When you were like building your business in your 20s, because that's when we met, right? We met whilst you were building Verb and I
remember.
was building Grabble, very different businesses. What did you think about attention then?
Because at that time, I was quite literally, more concerned with, is my business going out of business? How do I hang on to my staff? How do I pay the wage bill? And I suppose in that regard, I was probably more like a typical business owner than anything else. And I actually talk about this in a book I'm writing, which is there was a pretty sort of monumental moment for me where I woke up one morning and had an email as a direct message on LinkedIn from the head of marketing at Bugatti. And she had emailed me, we weren't even connected. And she had said, I follow all of your content. I love the way that you talk about running your business. I love the way you talk about culture. I would love to talk to you about the upcoming marketing brief for Bugatti Global. And our clients at the time were like, bog standard clients. They were paying a couple £100 to a couple £1,000. And then they came in with this like £1 million brief. And I remember pretty much after that being like, wow, if all the marketing that we do at Verb was geared and was expensive and was geared towards getting clients, and my, I suppose, thought leadership as it was, I didn't call it that back then, but talking about how I was running a business publicly had led to a £1 million client, and not just any, it was Bugatti. There's only one Bugatti. I was like, wow, there must be some serious power in this. And we did over like 3 or 4 weeks go and pitch them in Germany and have this amazing experience and won them. And on that plane journey back from them, I remember saying to my business partner, Ben Askins at the time, and being like, we're definitely not the best. We were like laughing a few drinks in, being like, we're definitely not the best agency. We're probably not the most qualified for it, but like she found us, and isn't that quite something? And that actually was, I suppose, my like eureka moment of, this is powerful.
Do you think that there's a difference in the impact of the stuff running B2B versus B2C?
Yeah, I mean, contextually, my business that I used to run, Verb, was we were looking for clients to book us to do marketing for them. So B2B business, it became very much focused on luxury towards the sort of later 3 or 4 years of the business. But for that, you can make a perfect argument that my personal brand and my online presence, as it were, ended up driving over 50% of the inquiries for the business, which is so powerful considering how much marketing costs to try and get in front of these brands. Nowadays, I run a business with my brother called Lottie, which is a care home marketplace, B2C, and it is very different in that the externalities of the personal brand are less obvious. But when we came to fundraise, we had the most opportunity probably in the market. We had the most inbound, I reckon, anyone's ever really come across. When we look to hire people, we have hundreds of applications. And I think that Lottie became very well known very quickly because, on the day that we launched it, I got to post it and got, hundreds of thousands of views on day one. So it has serious leverage. And then there is a B2B element that, again, is very useful.
What do you think has changed in over the last couple of decades around sentiment and around attitude from founders regarding building audience?
My first experience of it obviously changed me, but I remember at the time saying, I'm never posting a photo of myself. I'm never doing video. Like, I will only write, email and LinkedIn basically. But as time has gone on, you get more comfortable doing it and you progress. And I think that founders used to see it as a bit sort of lame and used to see it as a bit sort of, unqualified experts. And there's the whole, imposter syndrome piece as well. But I think that, if you look at it in the most binary sense in the world, if you're going to acquire 1 million views to your business, you would pay a lot for that. You'd pay an extraordinary amount, especially if they were the qualified views. And then you sort of reverse it out and think from a personal brand perspective, if you're quite good on something like LinkedIn, you can get 1 million views relatively easily. And like, it doesn't cost you nearly the same as paying for, ads or whatever. So I think people are starting to realize that people trust brands a lot less. People follow brands a lot less. You've got complete democratization of media going on where, the individual is becoming incredibly powerful. Like, if I was to advertise a B2C brand, I would look to find 5 or 6 influencers in that space, and I would go deep on working with them. I'd have them in my content, So I think people are starting to recognize that
you know, it's a huge competitive advantage if you can nail it. And I always think there's a very, you know, if I think of it from a personal perspective, but also it applies to most people. If you were a luxury agency back in the day, and then we were your competitor, even back then we were getting millions of views on our personal profiles every single day. And so if you were our competitor, it was hard for you. You were doing PPC, you were doing paid social media, you were doing emails, you were sponsoring conferences, but every day the clients were reading our posts on LinkedIn. And so it's like it's an outsized advantage. And I think people are clocking that.
I can only speak from my experience. Or one of my you know, negative self-talk things that I still feel, actually. I tried to work out as I'm asking a question. Do I still think this? I do still think this, but through practice, feel a little bit less. What my team will think about me.
It's a great question, because, and to what you said at the start, all you see nowadays is people posting about culture and running an amazing business and how amazing the staff is and stuff. But that stuff will bite you in the arse if you're not authentically a good leader. And so I post about that stuff a lot, but I also, as you know, like I put so much time and effort into making sure that the environment that people work in is amazing. And so if I was just posting and not doing the real stuff, obviously I think the disconnect would be very, very real. And a lot of people suffer from that. But like you, I think that, you know, imposter syndrome is something that you can practice yourself to not overcome, but certainly, you know, minimize. And like you, I mean, I've had the imposter syndrome around social, around personal brand forever. But as time goes on and on and on, and you achieve more and you practice what you preach, you can reduce it, but it will always stay with you, I think.
Have you ever had negative feedback or difficult conversations with your colleagues about being online and so social?
I think the only real challenge I ever had was, so my previous business I sold in 2021, and I sold it to a private equity backed agency. And I used to post a lot about, you know, culture, about leadership, about, you know, building a great business, giving your people, you know, the best lives that you could at the same time as a good job. And obviously we got bought, and immediately I lost the ability to control how the company, you know, ran. And I had to stop posting about it, because there was a massive disconnect between how this company wanted to run the business and treat people versus how I did, but I had sold it. And so I'd completely lost the ability. So for a year, I actually had a bit of a sort of crisis, because I was like, I don't know what I can post anymore, because I can't authentically say it's the best place in the world to work anymore, because I can't control that anymore. So
you started a new company so that you had good content. Got it.
I mean, I suppose nowadays I post about a lot more than what I did back then. And so in many ways, I'm thankful that it happened, because it forced me to sort of expand what I talk about and you know, what I read about and educate myself on. But obviously, yeah, I mean, I always try and run a place that people would like to work. Yeah.
One of the things I've learned, you know, let's use LinkedIn as a specific example. One of the things that I did and was quite known for was building in public. So sharing all of our information, our revenue, our growth numbers, everything completely transparently. People really enjoyed that. And I had an agreement with my business partner, Joel, that's what we were going to do. Deeply uncomfortable for him. He doesn't really use social media at all. He doesn't like any of that stuff. But we agreed that was exactly what we were going to do, because I was basically adamant that if I was going to start a business, that's what I wanted to do. But there was always this sort of like, that's okay, but other stuff not okay. And got into like a grey, murky area, like as business partners, about what we could post, what I could post online about Heights. Because to me, I was like, I mean, if you're posting everything, revenue, growth, bad month, terrible month, awful month, like etc., everything else in between is kind of whatever. It's not really a big deal. That's the worst thing that you could definitely shamefully admit. But I learned that wasn't necessarily the case. And so he certainly got uncomfortable with quite a lot of the stuff that I was sharing in that manner. And we ended up having a good conversation about it. And ironically, and this was, you know, all I ever posted on LinkedIn was about Heights, really. And I wasn't really growing, and I wasn't really doing it to grow or be a creator. It's just that's what I saw as the value of LinkedIn, was sharing a startup journey, raw, honestly, truthfully. And to me, like the kind of thing no one else does. Everyone just talks about the end.
Yeah.
And looking back,
All the good bits.
yeah, all the good bits, and this is the narrative back. And I was like, I'd love to do all the bad bits, and it'd be an amazing record of a startup journey, no matter how it goes. What actually happened was, he didn't want me to do that anymore, other than the stuff that we'd agreed to, and so I stopped really posting about heights, which then, as a content problem, was like, well, I like LinkedIn, I like posting about stuff. What should I post about?
Yeah.
And ended up actually, going more into like the psychology and leadership and this and that and stories of entrepreneurs, which is the stuff we do on Secret Leaders and stuff otherwise. And interestingly, my LinkedIn started growing considerably more. I think the lesson that I learned from that was, if you focus all your content on you, your business, what you're doing, how you do things, etc., it might work for one or two people, but generally speaking, it's actually not interesting enough. It's not enough variety. It's not actually good enough content in general to be a good growth strategy. By the very nature, ironically, of being asked to stop posting all the time about heights, and so having to figure out what am I going to post about, and finding lots of other things to post about that I find interesting, that I wanted to write about, and my LinkedIn grew enormously. So I guess I wanted to know if that surprises you, or that is sort of consistent with your views on how to do LinkedIn well, like how, if you were going to be a creator, how to grow and build an audience there. Does that sound?
Yeah, I mean, that sounds consistent. I obviously run a care home marketplace, which is a very successful business. But if I posted about that every single day, I'd go backwards. People would eventually get bored of it. And it's not because it's not an amazing business. It's just because eventually there's not that much more to say. And like, you never want to seem like you're selling too hard. And so for me, like, I think the piece of advice I always give to people who are about to become creators, or want to become creators, or want to leverage like massive upside, is you should become good at talking about what interests you and the ideas that interest you, because they will interest other people. And then if you're clever with promoting your business, you will, do some amazing posts on leadership and what you've learned, the lessons that are applicable to other people. What can you post that, is going to help people with their productivity or business culture or whatever, and then deliver your business message. And I always do this. You'll see that me do this on my social all the time. I very rarely talk about my own businesses, but when I do, I would have spent 2 or 3 days beforehand making sure that I'm landing quite viral content, so the impressions on my accounts are massively up, and so I can deliver a really powerful message about my own business. And so for entrepreneurs, I mean, well, for anyone, I think it's a bit of a missed trick. I get something like 35 million views a week on my content, which is insane. If you were to buy that, it would be just unaffordable. And most of my audience is, aware of my businesses. But if I post about them every day, my views will just crash.
Okay. How do you put yourself out there? This is a big thing, right? So you're going from scratch. You are interested in building an audience. Things you're saying make sense. How to actually do it?
So comfortability is a big question. And like I say, like at the beginning, I was like, I'm never posting a photo. I'm never doing video. I'm just writing. And funnily enough, for me, writing was definitely how I started. I just wrote every single day on LinkedIn. And I think LinkedIn is a good place for people to start, because you don't have to give away that much of yourself. It's not that uncomfortable. If you get into doing video all the time, you have to have like long video shoots, which are exhausting. And, you can't really scrub what you say, and it's out there, it's you. Whereas writing feels less invasive. So I would say to people, if you're uncomfortable, start writing and set yourself like the one goal, which would be, no matter what, I will post 7 days a week. And as a basic goal, the thing that, people always say consistency is the thing that makes a difference. And of course it does. It won't get you to the top. I know a lot of people who post every day and they post garbage. So like the baseline would be posting very regularly. So yeah, I started posting 5 days a week to begin with, and moved it to 7 as time went on. But I think the advice I try and give people is, on starting, you need to understand what you are going to talk about, because you can't start every day being like, what's my post going to be today? Because also practically, I run my business and I run my sort of personal brand business. I can't be spending all day thinking about what my LinkedIn post is or what I'm posting that day. And so I think you should sit down and say, these are the 4 topics I talk about. These are the sorts of formatted posts I talk about. This is my content. I know I'm going to post about this, this, and this. And they might be 4 different types of, types of content. You might be reading something, you might be reacting to something, and you should do it in batches so that when you come to the day, it's already scheduled, it's already done, you don't have to interact. And by doing that, you take the stress off it. And then people get so upset if their posts don't perform. Whereas for me, I just look at an aggregated line, like I just want the line to be going upwards. And if something doesn't work, I'll probably try it a few more times. If it doesn't work, I'll just can it as an idea. And so I treat it very much like a business, because again, where can you buy 35 million views? It's like near impossible. Whereas everything that I do nowadays, I feel like I'm 1 or 2 or 3 steps ahead of other people, because I can just bring this huge viewership to whatever I'm doing. And my audience know that I am authentic with the things that I say. Like, I actually run a business, and so I can talk about running a business. And I think that's the starting point would definitely be put a good plan in place. Don't just post, as it were.
If you don't have experience yet, so say you're 21 and you're hearing this and you're like, but I'd like to be a LinkedIn creator, I'd like to be a TikTok creator, I'd like to be whatever, Instagram, YouTube, doesn't matter the platform, right? How? Like, you don't have expertise yet. Well, I mean, obviously they would disagree with that, because all 21-year-olds think they're very expert. But what should one talk about?
Well, like you say, it's all relative. At 21, I certainly thought I was an expert on marketing.
Correct.
And so if I was 21 now, I would do the exercise. I would say, what are the things I'm interested in most? And also, I think, like, you've got to be a bit ruthlessly strategic about it. So something like LinkedIn, leadership, culture, AI, these are all like inherently viral topics. People love them. HR, culture, like all that sort of stuff. And there are some posts you can do which are things that everyone agrees with. You can give yourself a good leg up in terms of impressions and views and interest from off the bat. It's not too hard to decode what is already viral topics, And so as a youngster, I would put down my interest, and then I would put down the thing that I'm trying to achieve. So my first business, the thing I was trying to achieve was leads for my agency. And so I knew that brands would want to follow an individual who talked about marketing. I knew that, people would want to see someone talk about leadership and culture. And in the end, it kind of evolved, but I talked about leadership, culture, business, marketing, and I went very deep on marketing, but like not just luxury marketing, all types of marketing. And so I picked topics that were already quite viral and things that interested me. If you're really interested in super niche things, that's fine, but you should know up front that your potential audience size is going to be quite small.
Let's take a quick break to hear from our sponsors. When we come back, we'll discuss why building a personal brand is an absolute game changer, whether you're running a business, jumpstarting a side hustle, or climbing the corporate ladder. We'll also get into the specifics of Chris's content strategy, from leveraging video to building a high-performing team around you. Okay, now for our sponsor, Personio. We'll be right back. I'm going to level with you. I'm not the best manager in the world. I'm a decent coach, but management is my co-founder's thing, not mine. And thank God for that, because developing your team is one of the single most high leverage things you can do as a leader, which is why I'm really happy we're working with Personio. They're the all-in-one HR platform you need to handle everything, from hiring to onboarding, handling absences to managing compensation. Their features touch every point of the employee lifecycle, from onboarding right through to exit interviews. And because they automate so much of the boring but necessary HR admin, you and your managers can focus on getting the best out of your people. So, if you're leading a growing business and want to spend less time on HR admin, then book a demo at personio.com/secret leaders. That's personio.com/secret leaders. There's a link in the show notes. So you talked about how, to an extent, like how to put yourself out there, but why do you even want to do it? I mean, you mentioned obviously big audience and stuff, but draw a little bit deeper.
So why to do it? So all I can really speak to is the people that I have worked with. I can talk to what's happened to me. But I suppose the concept is leverage at the end of the day. Like, I have an enormous amount of leverage that I can bring to anything that I do. So I have an audience that if I start a business tomorrow that's B2B, I can immediately post about it and get millions of views. And like I say, like as a startup, as a business, that would be invaluable, basically. I think that in the context of a person with a job, so I talk to a lot of graduates who say, I want to build a personal brand. People would say, why would they build a personal brand internally? But if you were at a law firm or management consultancy firm, you were 21 as a graduate and you posted content regularly and got thousands and thousands of views, everyone in your own organization will know you. The partners will know you. It'll be good press for them. You might end up, resulting in new clients or press opportunities. And so you're just building yourself outsized leverage immediately, which is when it comes to pay rises, promotions, and so forth. You'll be looked at fondly because you have both things now. You both have the carrot and the stick. So they're like, this person's amazing because they give, upside to the firm, but also don't really want to annoy this person because they have 25,000 engaged graduates who are graduating next year who might want to look at our firm or not look at our firm. So there's almost, in my mind anyway, if you're comfortable with it, quite infinite upside, because if you roll it all the way forward to, for example, what I've done, brands will want to work with you, brands will sponsor you, any businesses out there will approach you and offer you to be, executive or non-exec, and they'll offer you equity. I mean, the leverage becomes quite crazy towards the end. But as a business owner, the most obvious thing is staff and team. So, Lottie's like 75 people now, and we never use recruitment agencies ever. We never have to. And yet when we put out a job role, we will just get hundreds of people applying for a role. And it's because we have this big presence. So I think as well, if you're in a corporate role, which again, a lot of the people in my audience are, they will say, what's the point in building it? And a lot of them are thinking about a side hustle. They're thinking about a future business. If you can build something, some audience, 10,000, 20,000 people on LinkedIn, it's not too challenging to do that. By the time you come to your side hustle, day one, you can find clients. Whereas if you're speaking to an empty room, it's going to be much, much harder.
Let's talk strategy and tactics. Okay, so I'm working in an organization, or I'm a founder, whatever. Clean slate, no social media. Where do I start?
I think it depends who you are. If you're comfortable on camera, the upside on the video platforms is insane.
What does that mean?
So, everyone last year told me that Instagram was impossible to grow on. And in 6 months, I think I grew a 250K audience and 10 million views a week. And it was on business, bite-sized business culture content. So if you're good on video, TikTok and Instagram are an amazing place to go because the platforms are competing with each other. And so they're giving an enormous amount of viewership to people so that they keep them on their platforms. So if you can do video, I would say look at those. Also on top of that is the monetization aspect of those platforms. So something like TikTok has the creativity beta program. So if you get millions of views, you're also making tens of thousands a month just from your viewership. Same with YouTube, same with Facebook and so forth. If you're more of a writer, then I would say LinkedIn is your place to start. And I would say pick your topics, pick your focuses. What is your goal? Why are you doing it? And then start writing every single day. And the thing I talk about a lot is like my audiences and the platforms they're on will change. The platforms will change drastically. And so you might actually lose those audiences in the future. And you've seen this, loads of people with big Twitter accounts or Instagram accounts are starting over completely. And it's because the audiences are dead or inactive or no longer there. And so I always talk to aspiring creators or creators about trying to deplatform people to your own newsletter, or I would say probably YouTube is a great place to deplatform people too, because it's second biggest search engine. It's not going anywhere in a long time. So how do you bring people off those platforms and to your central lists, I think is not very talked about, but very important.
So how do you do it? Talk us tactically, like a little bit of LinkedIn for dummies, Instagram or TikTok for dummies.
Yeah.
Newsletter for dummies. Let's start with LinkedIn.
This point is the same for all social media platforms. If you want to gain millions of followers, you will need like a team. And that's like a team of friends. They don't have to work with you, but it's that sort of principle that like 1 + 1 does equal 3. If I have 2 or 3 of my close friends who are starting the journey at the same time, we're going to engage each other's content. We're going to push each other. if
And you have the accountability. You're doing it every day. I'm doing it every day.
the accountability is a huge part of it. So, people will look at my audience now and be like, wow, it's unbelievable. Like it's unachievable, etc. But I built it in 18 months. I quite literally built the whole audience, bar a little bit to start with on LinkedIn, in 18 months from scratch. And I have, a few close friends who we said to each other, we're going to do this every single day. And so even on days I didn't want to, I let them down. I didn't want to ruin their accountability. And so I think that concept is super important early on, is to find people who want to achieve the same things, push them. And, you can be competitive with them. You can be happy for them. You always want to grow a little bit more than them. I mean, that's just human nature. But having that crew is key, because I have like 4 or 5 people around me that post similar stuff that I do and so forth. But they always all make mistakes. And then I learn from their mistakes before I even post. And so my sort of iteration wheel is just faster than if I was on my own. So step 1, I would say, like, get some friends who are doing it. Or in my regard, I was a smaller creator who reached out to bigger creators and said, I want to learn from you. I would engage your content as much as I possibly can. I will support you, promote you. I used to do posts about big creators and how amazing they were, but it was me trying to, I suppose, curry favor with them. And then I got into this big group of people who are professional creators. And I'm not, I would say business owner first, but then I was pushed so hard by them to keep up with their levels. So that was, I think, step 1 is accountability partners, and, don't try and do it on your own. And then I suppose tactically, I would put together your why more than anything, because again, if you're posting 365 days a year, it is exhausting. Like, what the hell are you going to talk about? Like, don't be afraid to repeat the same thing. So I would always say, like, with my content, there will be repetition every 3 months of old stuff. It might be in a slightly new format. It might be in a new image. It might be drawn differently, written slightly differently, but conceptually very similar. And that's because, again, there's not that much new in the world. You actually, especially if your audience is growing quickly, like I for example, on LinkedIn, I gained 50,000 followers in a week. So that those 50,000 followers presumably not seen so much of my previous stuff. And so if you sort of extrapolate, in a few months' time, there'll be hundreds of thousands of my audience who haven't seen many of my old posts. So I think repetition is key. So that brings you to the idea of like having tenets that you rely on. Like, these are the things I believe in. These are the things I live. And so these are the things I will talk about. Accountability, and then putting your plan together. And then I suppose the experimentation part is key. So if you are posting every single day, you've got to be super intentional about understanding why things are working and why they aren't. Don't keep, like, I know so many people who post the same stuff all the time. Never works, but they never seem to want to experiment with it. Whereas I would always say, if you want to grow rapidly on social media, it's actually about understanding pre-qualified content, as in pre-verified viral content. So for example, I talk a lot about leadership, and I did this post a couple of years ago called, people talk about red flag all the time in leadership. I did a post called the green flags of leadership. I hadn't really seen it before, but it was an idea that I had with a team. That piece of content, anyone can post that now and it will go viral. And I see people post it all the time and it goes viral. And so,
as in they're reposting your post.
They're taking the idea of green flags and what I posted originally, which for LinkedIn's it was like 150,000 likes or something in like a couple of days, with like 7 million views on one post. Now people can post that as a concept regularly and they will get traction. They might have to change up the what for them signals green flags in leadership. And so I don't think people need to work as hard as they are. Like, you can take a lot from what happens out there, from other creators you love. And that's like my main point to people who are new. Find 5 to 10 creators that you absolutely love. You love their content. And it might be you love this stream of content from one or this stream from another, and then bring it all together in your inspiration. And so that's exactly what I did when I first started, posting. It's like, I love personal development from this guy, or I love how deep this person goes on business stuff. And then it was like, okay, I can kind of see my brand of content, which is things I'm super interested in, but also I know this stuff will do well. And then, be ruthless. Like, I actually am pretty obsessed with AI, because I think that it just feeds so much of what I've done previously in my life. I'd love to have had it when I was first starting businesses, etc., or in school. But even if you don't, I would force yourself to talk about topics that are in the news, because if you're smart and newsjack on a platform like LinkedIn, you can just go viral overnight type thing.
And look, it's ironically, whether you're an expert on AI or not, it's new for most people.
Yeah.
So there's another approach, I think, that's not really talked about yet by you, which is I'm learning in public. I'm learning this thing. I don't know either. I've just played with Claude and these were my amazing results. That's still interesting for people. You don't, not all content has to actually be expert content. Sometimes it's quite nice to just do this is what I learned this week.
Yeah.
And actually turn that into really authentic and valuable content for other people that can go viral.
Yeah. So I do a lot of curation with content nowadays. So I did a lot of my AI learning publicly. I did a lot of I've just discovered this, or I'm playing with this. These tools are super interesting. Look at what you can use it for, how it's applicable to content, how it's applicable to business. And then I started doing curation of the things I had used to learn. And that content is super valuable because people go, okay, I trust Chris. I followed him for a while. I know he talks about these things. He's learning AI. And therefore, I don't have the time to learn it myself as he is, but I can learn from how he learned it. And those, again, it's not as hard to post that content. I don't have to create that much new stuff. I just have to, be quite conscious about if I'm learning from these courses, I can now recommend those courses.
I actually think that's a really valuable point, though. Curation. There's so much noise everywhere. So actually, another expert thing you can do as a creator is be a curator, find the best content and be known to make that stuff simple and clear for people in one place.
Yeah. It's easy as well to, as in if you're thinking ruthless efficiency with growth, if you're recommending 4 or 5 other creators and their amazing work, they're more likely to recommend you back. You're more likely to curry favor with them. Their audiences might see your work. They might reshare you. And so you've got to think about content first and foremost. It's the absolute key. But then you've got to think about distribution more than anything, which is how is my content, when I have no followers, going to go out into the masses? And it's if you're doing it completely authentically, you would talk about lots of other people, you would engage. But the slightly less authentic way, but very effective way of doing it is, there's 30 other creators who talk about the same thing. You engage them, they engage you. And even if you do it officially or unofficially, if you're just starting your account, I would say, if you're going to spend years and years and years focused on content creation, why would you not give yourself the leg up? And people will hate me saying that, and they'll say it's inauthentic or whatever.
The game is the game.
But the game is the game.
And basically, there are rules in the game.
Yeah. And
part of the thing is actually understanding what the rules are, which are hidden and obfuscated from most people, because people like to pretend that the game isn't the game. I know that sounds overly deep, but in reality, that is I think one of the things we both experienced, which is most people do not want to actually share how to grow on any of these social platforms at all.
Yeah.
And they sell courses and all sorts of things about how to, and they actually regurgitate the same stuff, which has nothing to do with how to.
Yeah. It's absolutely wild.
So for LinkedIn, so far you've said, find your content mix, understand exactly the areas you're going to speak about. Don't just regurgitate stuff that's not working. Hone in on the things that are, pay attention to it, focus more on posting the stuff that does. Make sure that you're doing it with friends, engaging with each other, etc. What's next? How do you ace the game on LinkedIn from 0 to 1 or 0 to 1,000?
Well, all that stuff is what you need to do to get good. I think to get yourself to a point where you're doing quite well and you're gaining traction. To level to the point where a couple of my friends and myself are, where I think I have the fastest growing LinkedIn account that there is. Certainly whenever I look at the rankings, it will always be the fastest growing. And now it's probably at a point where on average I'll get just on LinkedIn 20 million views a week, which is obviously slightly mind-blowing. If you want to do that, then I think that you have to super professionalize the whole thing. It has to be a pretty military operation.
So what does that mean? What is your military operation?
So for me, I have a full-time staff member who just works on my LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And that is sourcing content, it's looking at what's performed previously really well on my content, other people's content, what's in the news. How do we then create deeper content, more complex content for people to engage with? And so it brings us to this point, which is like, okay, there's different types of content that have different objectives and different outcomes. So there is content that gains huge virality, views and impressions, which won't convert to followers. So let's just hold that here for a second. And then there is content that really makes people consider and think and want to save your content. And we keep that right here. If you post this stuff all the time, you'll have very low impressions. You might convert followers at a good ratio, but you're not going to grow very quickly. And so accounts like mine, what I will try and do is I will try and post high virality stuff. So stuff I know has gone viral previously of my own stuff or other people's, and try and put a more complex message to it. So you might post something, a well-known meme or image about failure, or these sort of workplace graphics about failure, but then I'll write a complex understanding of how I've dealt with failure and how you can overcome it. But I know that post will do well. That will gain millions of impressions. The next day, I will do a post on how to use AI to create content, and it will be a deeper, more complex, infographic or so forth that people will see and they'll want to save. And so they immediately have to follow you for more content like that. Or even you could say, if you want me to send you it, you can subscribe to my newsletter. And so you've got to become very intentional about the type of content that you do. And then again, if you want to promote your business or something, you want to be doing that after a couple of high virality, high impression posts, because again, your business stuff isn't going to go viral immediately. So you've got to kind of play the game a bit to give it a bit of a launch.
And presumably then you do the company stuff and then it brings the engagement back down again. And so you need to build it up again with more viral posts. And is that essentially the system?
Recently, I've worked with other creators who have done really, really viral illustrations. And I've done that at the beginning of the week. And I've had weeks recently where I've got my impressions up to 20 to 30 million impressions in a week. And I've delivered 40 or 50,000 followers in a week through high conversion posts towards the end. And so you've got to play the game. It's effectively like if I was to deliver a message and sell a product to people, I would want to fill the room first. And that's exactly what the concept is.
Yeah, it's fascinating because it's actually essentially the same as a marketing funnel.
Identical. And that's when I say, like, you've got to professionalize it. I was a professional digital marketer for 12 years. I did this for businesses and celebrities forever. And then I suddenly thought, if I'm going to do this for myself, I don't want to spend forever growing an audience. I want to do it as fast as possible, as efficiently as possible. And I don't want it to take over my life. I don't want to think about it all the time. I don't want to be on social media all the time myself. I want to get it into a place where I have outsized leverage and opportunity in my life. And nowadays, I'll get invited to speak at most conferences. And even if you don't want to, you still have the opportunity to. And I've got this engine now that creates content. On the video side, it's very similar. I don't have a long form content strategy, but that's what I'm going to be pushing into next. But the short form stuff is very similar. You look at what's working, what your audience likes. If someone likes one of your videos, they're more than likely going to like the same concept again and again and again. And so you've got to be very efficient with that.
How does one find a good concept? Like, what is the process you went through to find the concept that you've been using and like rinse and repeating, which is essentially like tearing down bad bosses and bad messages at work?
So, I mean, the funny thing about that is that's actually based on, for years, I've talked about like good management and bad management. And I think it's because when I was younger, I had really bad bosses.
Yeah, I did too.
In hospitality, they were awful. And I had one professional job. I had two professional jobs. One manager was awful. One was okay. And then when I sold my business, the people we sold to were awful people. And so it sort of reignited the fire of like, what a bad boss is. And everyone's had a bad boss. And so it's, as a concept, it's applicable to everyone. Everyone can resonate with a boss being a dick when you're a little bit late, when the traffic's bad, or like, when you're prioritizing your children over your work and your boss treats you like you're a child. And it's like, well, I love my job, but my child is more important to me. And so as a concept, it works really well and it's very engaging with the audience. It's very suspenseful. People like a story. They like what happens next. The other thing I do, which does really, really well, is I call out on entrepreneurs. So like the obvious people who have gained massive online following, but from effectively complete, lying and creating these stories and faking it and posing next to Lamborghinis and all that sort of flash without any of the substance, and then they sell you a course that never really delivers. And so I do that a lot, and people like that because I think anyway, because I have run 2 big businesses now, people think I'm authentically credible enough to both speak about what's good and what's bad. And I think that's a great format, because I always think the reason I post is I would love to have read my content when I was 21, and that's like my underlying thing. Obviously it's expanded nowadays, but that's what I remember doing at the beginning, is like, I would love to create content that my 21-year-old super imposter syndrome entrepreneur would love to engage with. And so that sort of drives a lot of the formats nowadays.
So that's the one thing that I think people miss, myself included. Who are you writing for? Or who are you creating for? Who's your target audience? Again, same as when you're building a brand. But I find it very challenging doing personal brand stuff to think that way, because it's all very meta, and I struggle with that. Who are you writing for then? Is it 21-year-old entrepreneurs broadly, like people who are looking to create?
So I think when I first started making content, it was definitely that. It was, I want to create content that will guide people through, I had 7 years as an entrepreneur, and I wasn't particularly good at networking. I wasn't particularly good at getting out. So I never spent any time with other founders.
We've talked about this. Yeah.
And it's wild, really. Yeah. But like, I sat in a room in Brick Lane and I worked every hour of the day. And that's all I did. I never gave myself any chance of outsized leverage or opportunity or network or anything. And I just worked really, really, really hard. And you don't have to work that hard. You don't have to sacrifice that much. Like, especially if you're strategic about it, you can create massively upsized opportunity and then work less than you are. I spent years trying to get clients that notice our brand, and all I could have done instead is write online every day.
Let's take one more break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the time commitment required, the potential impact on your mental health, how to navigate concerns from your co-founders and investors, and if you do it right, why it's all worth it. We'll be right back. Are you building a SaaS or venture-backed business? Or are you just trying to grow internationally? Well, if potential customers or investors haven't already asked you about ISO 27001, SOC 2, or GDPR compliance, they probably will soon. Achieving compliance can unlock major growth for your company, but the process is often time-intensive and costly. This is where our partner, Vanta, can help. Vanta automates up to 90% of compliance work, getting you audit ready in weeks instead of months and saving you significant costs. Plus, Vanta scales with your business, helping you successfully enter new markets, land bigger deals, and earn customers' trust. As a special offer, Secret Leaders listeners get 20% off Vanta when they go to vanta.com/secretleaders. That's VANT.com/secretleaders for 20% off. There's a link in the description. So how much time do you think you do spend, or how much time does one need to spend? Your average Joe who is trying to run a business. I guess they're not that average in the first place, but our typical listener, who's a founder, busy founder like you, but you're like hearing this stuff and you're like, full-time person, it's another like employee in a separate company then, like they need management, I need to do this content or not, it all starts to stack up. Or like, is this a day a week? Is it like an hour a week? Give us some advice. What does one do? How do we build up?
So I think the roadmap that I took in my first company is a great way of thinking about it, which is and Steve Bartlett said this about social chain, and it's the same thing in that it's much, much easier to market Steve Bartlett than it is to market social chain. And it was the same thing with me and Verb. Like, we could put time and effort into making me a thought leader in marketing and luxury rather than getting Verb onto the tip of everyone's tongues. And then every single conference that happened in that industry, I ended up becoming the luxury guy. And so I was invited to speak at all the conferences. Just made things easier. So I would say, principally as a CEO, I would say most of the time, and there will be exceptions to this, your job is the generation of business, and it's the generation of revenue and bringing clients to your company. And so I would say you will have a marketing budget for your brand and your business anyway. I would just put some of that towards the intentional growth of your personal brand. What I wouldn't do is outsource your personal brand. Everyone does it. Founders all over do it. They go, marketing team member, I want to post 5 days a week. You've got this. But the thing is, for you to make it excellent and for you to make it brilliant, you need to be part of it. It's a personal brand for a reason. So I would say, take it seriously, commit to one platform first. And like I said before, it depends on how comfortable you are with the different platforms. But for most businesses and most founders, I would say LinkedIn is a huge unlock. And it's unbelievable the amount of traffic you get and the amount of people on the platform. So it's sort of a why not? And if people are saying, I don't have the time, I would say, I question whether you're working on the right things. Because as a business owner, as you get more experience, you realize that phrase that you hear when you're younger about working on the business versus working in the business, you're like, yeah, no, of course. But then you get older and you go, oh, I really do know what that means. It means I don't work on these things. I outsource them to my team, and I monitor the progress of them. And that's the relationship I have with my team. Is you guys are delivering on this. My job is to bring outsized interest to our company. That is what I do for the company. And if you think about it like that, it makes your job is attention. And like you said at the beginning, everything's downstream from attention.
Yeah. What about just managing your mental health? So that might be actually a very particular, I just bring more of myself into that conversation. How can you help me manage my mental health and my DMs? It might not be a problem for you, but you just get inundated. And I really like to be a good person. And I hate the idea, reputationally, the bigger you are, the harder you fall, and people make assumptions about you, and people feeling unheard, and like you're ignoring that. Like there's no choice after a while than basically just to ignore 99.9% of these DMs, and that's at my size, which is maybe 1/10 of your size. So it's like there is a point in time where it becomes unmanageable for even the best will in the world.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with that? Because also the other side of it is like trying to build community, right? Trying to build authentic engagement, trying to build real connection with people who are following your content and are giving you love and attention. You want to reward that, and it's natural. You want it to feel like a two-way exchange, but how?
It makes me think about something I didn't say earlier tactically, which is if you want outsized opportunity, you're going to have to work hard for it.
Yeah.
It's not easy. Everyone's going to do it. And moving forwards, I think most young business owners will see being a creator and an influencer alongside being a business owner as par for the course. And so upfront, I will say it's not easy. It is time consuming. Once you get to having an audience, then growing an audience can grow faster. But building the first part of the audience is really, really hard. And responding to DMs and building community and responding to comments is critical at the beginning. And I would even say, like, I've moved into different formats this year, and I have put so much time into responding to people, to engaging with people and so forth. But you get to a point where it's physically impossible. If you think like a normal post every day on the platform is getting 3 million impressions or something, that means that you're getting thousands of comments. It's just impossible. So I put that in my comment. I put it in my about section that unfortunately, because of the size of the platform, I can't respond to everything. I will always try my best to. To the point on mental health, I mean, I feel like in my life I've been through the ringer. I feel like I played the first part of my life on absolute hard mode, and I honestly drove myself to the absolute edge of my mental health could take me. I felt awful for years. And I suppose nowadays, I think that has given me a really, really tough skin. I've been through horrible clients, awful acquisition, terrible boss, all these things that have driven me to, close to my own slightly going insane. And so nowadays, I feel like I have a very thick skin. And I think you do need to an extent, if you are going to go quite big on social. Because if you want to laugh, look at my comments on my TikTok, on my Instagram. One of the most common comments I get is, your dad paid for your business, you posh twat, you anyone that speaks like that is, you know,
it can't help having your accent, my accent.
Exactly. Like, and it's easy for them to do that.
Yeah.
And I don't even mind. In many ways, I read the stuff and I laugh. The stuff that I think, for me, I laugh at would upset and affect other people. A lot of the commentaries, like, you're really fat, or like, every video I see, you get fatter. And I have like trolls who are so dedicated to trying to ruin my day. It's unbelievable. But I just, a lot of the time I feel sorry for them, because I'm like, if you're doing that, one, like, what else are you doing with your day? You know, to be on my video in the first couple of minutes being like, you're fat, or you're posh, or, you know, we don't all have your parents' money. And it's like, one, I don't come from wealthy parents, but if that makes them feel better about themselves, I almost don't want to fight and engage them, you know? But I would say, if you're someone that struggles with it, I wouldn't say it's the first place to go, because it is a bit rough.
This is the thing, right? Everything is downstream of attention. That's fine. Everything worth having, it like comes at a cost, and every light has a shadow. So this is it's quite a big shadow. It just is.
It is, yeah.
Right? It's a really good reason to not want to do any of this. You know, like, frankly, even it's just like our wives. Like, I won't speak for yours, but I know we've spoken about this before. Like, just no interest.
Zero interest.
Like, getting her to post something on LinkedIn, like, takes like a week of me nagging her because she should. And she just doesn't want to. Like, there's no interest, and just like really just low ego, and rather put herself down than bring herself up, and like, especially publicly, just can't do it. But it's not just can't do it; it's does not want to, and sees no value in it for herself. Right? It's just there is no logical argument to it. Can see how it is for me, but for herself, absolutely not. So it is interesting, because also generally much happier than I am. Generally such a content person, doesn't have all of these like stresses you have from wanting more, bigger audience, more attention. These are categorically some of the most toxic behaviors that a human being can have. And I'm not criticizing you, I do it too, so I'm sympathizing with you. You're just doing it better than me. But the root desire that we both have for attention comes from a logical place, right? Which is, this is good for business, and I'm sending out a good message in the world, not a toxic one, and I'm trying to spread positive messages in the world, not toxic ones. These are all good things. But the innate desire for attention is like the 101 that people tell you is critically bad for your mental health and critically bad for happiness. So how do reasonable, logical people like us know those are the facts and still make all these excuses that it's a brilliant idea?
I'll only tell you from my experience what drives me. And I think there is a innate thing inside me, which is I kind of do want to have it all. And I think to get to where I want to be, and so I'm 33 now, and I think that I don't know if I want to run big businesses for my whole life, if I'm really honest with you. And I've been completely transparent. I very rarely say this, but I've run big businesses since I was 21, and I ran a business from 15 to 21, you know. It's hard. Like, it's hard graft to run a business. And, you know, I've run bootstrap businesses, and I've sold them, and I've now run VC-backed businesses, and they all come with unbelievable pressure. I would say that the pressure of running social versus that is nothing. I'd say the pressure of running a big and successful business and carrying everyone's mortgages on your back, I think, is very painful and is very exhausting. And if you'd met me in the later stages of my first business, like, I was, not to say that I'm particularly in shape now, but like deeply overweight, very unhappy, super depressed, you know, really struggling, drinking an enormous amount. And I think that when I look at what this can provide, if you're okay with dealing with some negativity, I feel like you can provide yourself kind of an escape velocity plan from everything, which is, you know, if you are thinking in the sort of Tim Ferriss way, the 4-hour work week, you can work much, much less than an ordinary person and get the same or much, much more back from your life by being strategic and, you know, honest about what you want. And I think a lot of people would say that there are narcissistic or tendencies or to it all. But I think for me, I am brutally efficient with it, which is why a lot of it doesn't affect me. I don't know if I do it for the acclaim of the interest, or I don't care about a lot of that stuff. I do it in many ways because I don't know if I can create an easier way than what I'm doing. And I think that when I get to a certain point, which is I'm experiencing it now in my day-to-day life, which is almost everything that I go into is easier. Everything that I interact with comes to me quicker. The opportunities in every market that I enter just appear on day one. It doesn't really matter what the space is, but I would say to entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, or whatever, nothing great is going to come without some downside or an incredible amount of hard work. But when entrepreneurs, I do occasionally, support entrepreneurs, they'll say, it's not quite going my way, or we keep losing, or our competitors keep beating us, and they won't acknowledge that people nowadays don't follow brands as much. If you want to be an entrepreneur, you have to accept that it's going to come with a bit of gladiatorial, combat, and personal brand in many ways is your way of fighting and beating your competitors. And for me, I think that I will, be an entrepreneur forever, but I just think that I might try and become a thought leader and an advisor rather than someone that always runs big companies, because those are exhausting.
And do you feel like this then gives you more luck surface area, essentially, to pick the next thing as and when it comes up?
I mean, that's it in a nutshell. I mean, take this year, for example, but people have asked me to co-author books that they're prepared to do the work on. I say no to it, but it's amazing that an author would approach me and be like, would you co-write this with me? Because they want to leverage my audience. It's
a value exchange.
Completely. And that happens in every moment of my life these days. And so the downside, the only real downside.
What are you getting out of this?
Huh?
What are you getting out of this?
You're a good friend.
Okay. Value exchange.
Yeah. Well, it's the only podcast I've done. The only real downside I find, and I just say this to Lou all the time, she's like, do you know what, because I get recognized quite a lot now, which is a weird thing to start happening, to be honest. That's relatively new, where someone will be like, oh, I love your videos on the street, in the middle of the street, which is very strange. The one thing I don't like is if I'm in the gym and someone comes up to me like mid-set or on the running machine being like, oh, I love your videos. And it's like, can you just fuck off? Because I'm in the middle of my personal space right now. And so I think the only change I've had to make is I now just wear a cap to the gym.
That's funny.
That's it, really.
I have a joke with Melissa where I'm only famous in co-working spaces.
Because of
the most niche fame.
Yeah,
it's quite incredible.
Yeah.
I went to a co-working space this week with my team. We were working in Holborn on Wednesday, and 10, maybe 15 people were like, Dan, but secret leaders, hi. They were like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I know, this is literally what happens if I go to a co-working space.
Yeah.
Nowhere else. Which is actually a very nice place to be, because the niche notoriety, niche awareness is amazing, but not touching any kind of fame. I walk out onto the street, no one would know who I am. That's actually much nicer.
Yeah.
I would hate that at the gym. I would hate that.
If you're like I want to release my own show at the moment. I want to write a book. And I think therefore to do those things, you do need mass awareness.
Yeah.
To give yourself the best chance of success you do. So I don't know how many people there are in London, but let's say it's like 10 million people, right?
Yeah.
I have multiple videos a week that get 10 million views on each channel. And so if you think about like how many people are seeing it, it's not surprising that now recognition is massively on the up. And the I don't mind it. I think it slightly is the price to pay for what I want to achieve. And I'm okay with that. I've sort of made that deal with myself. But like you say, like so many people, like my close friends, if we go to the pub, they have zero interest. I still don't know if my close friends know what I do. And I quite love that about our relationship. But it is, you pick your poison. And I've obviously chosen that I want to be, a thought leader. I want to be someone that creates content that helps other people with their day to day. And I feel like because I've been through it and I've actually lived the things that I say and I talk about, I've built businesses from scratch, bootstrapped. I've built VC-backed businesses. I have a lot to share. And if I'm not willing to share it, like who is? And so I think it is important that the stuff is shared. And then on top of that, I'm just not that affected anymore by the negative comments. But again, I haven't really had a negative part yet. Whereas, some of the big names at the moment are being cancelled or they're being, torn down by the media. That must be quite rough on mass.
What about the people who are already in a business and they want to go for it, but, you know, they have business partners, investors, other people who are just like, what are you doing? You know, you just described spending a lot of time. It's time.
Yeah.
So yeah, sure, like funnel it into the business and there's an argument for that, etc. But equally, there's definitely the dichotomy of this, right? Which is that you yourself become too big for the business and you suddenly have earned yourself unfair outsized leverage over your business partner or over your investors. And actually you've changed the power dynamic super consciously, maybe innocently at first, but consciously over time. And now you're in a powerful position. You can totally see how that is good for you. But you can also see intelligent people around you in your business, like investors, like co-founders, who wouldn't want to put themselves in that situation because they're like, I'm focusing on the business that we agreed to do together.
Yeah.
And you're building yourself over the business. And now where does that leave us like on equal footing? And there'll be a lot of people who are in businesses that are like that. It's very common that co-founders have complementary skills, right? So therefore kind of rare that you'd both be attention seekers. So one is likely to be the marketeer, the storyteller, the attention seeker, and the other person may be more operational, financially oriented. What's your advice for those people?
Well, I suppose my advice for the one seeking the outsized return for them personally would be like, crack on. The results are unbelievable. For the people that are in their sphere, I think you have to be really honest with them. And again, I think I am a very, very, very honest and very quick communicator with everything that I'm doing. And so my first business partner, he too builds personal brand. And so we both, that was very easy. It was like, this is going to gain huge traction for our business. Let's crack on. Let's both do it. And he would say at the time, my personal brand exploded pretty quickly. His took a lot longer to get going. But he was like, well, we want to build an amazing business and sell our business. 50% of our clients come from Chris. That's a pretty good deal, you know. Now I'd say that my business partner and my investors are firmly aware of all my personal brand stuff, but I do think that they see the externalities for the business being so much higher than not doing it. And that is in staff, that's in clients, that's in awareness, that's in every conference we're the speakers, every panel we're on. You know, we get huge outsized interest in that market that we're in. I mean, do people ever question whether I should be working more in the business? I'm sure. People very rarely ever say it, but I'm sure it's a consideration. But I suppose, again, it's like, well, you can't have your cake and eat it. I can't build a personal brand and only be interested in the business, because you couldn't do a personal brand just on the business. Yep. And so, you know, it's funny. I was talking to someone the other day about like, what do you value the personal brand at? And I was like, I'll give you a basic answer, which isn't accurate in any way. But if you were to pay for 1,000 views on a platform, it's very easy to find out that cost. So on LinkedIn, you know, cost per mil, I think they call it. So cost per 1,000 is like $25 to $35 for 1,000 views. So for example, I have my business name, Lottie, in my headline. I get 20 million views a week. That alone has meant that our company page just grows rapidly, and people can't grow company pages. And so you think to yourself, well, it's very easy to put a numerical value on that stuff, even if you ignore all the externalities.
Yeah, that's actually a nice way of framing it, because again, like, it's just systematically describing a funnel and actual tangible impact, which is a lot more easy to communicate to partners than just fluffy, like, it'll be good for us.
Yeah. And I would say, like, if you're doing it and you have conflict in your own business about doing it,
which is likely, I think it is a likely thing to happen.
I would say get very good at understanding the benefit. So if staff are coming to the business to apply and they say it's because they saw your LinkedIn, that is so valuable. Like, how much does it cost really to acquire a good person to work in your business? It's a lot, and it's so much time, and it might be recruitment agencies on top of the time. And so if you're resulting in 25% of the applicants, huge value add. If you're resulting in X many of the clients coming to the business, huge value add. The awareness, the views, like if I do a big post on my LinkedIn about Lottie, the website traffic spikes. I mean, that's the quantum that we're talking about. Lottie's a big business now, and I can still spike the traffic. So I've become good at, I suppose, the justifications for personal brand. I didn't think about it like that. My investors knew on the way in, my brother's my co-founder, knew on the way in I had a personal brand. And so that's sort of baked in with me. But if you're going from scratch, do learn those levers.
Let's talk about the business of personal brand. I think most people don't really think about personal brand as a business if they're doing it as a side hustle.
Yeah.
But firstly, like, you're running your business and you're doing personal brand stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't think that people think about it like that.
No.
But you do. And you think about it not just like a business, but like actually quite like a ruthless, well-operated, thoughtful business.
Yeah.
And I found that really interesting talking to you. I obviously am aware of people like Stephen Bartlett or Jay Shetty or whatever. They're like big businesses and it all makes sense. But I think you thought about this early enough and set it up and structured it early enough as a business. Talking to you about it, it makes sense. Can you give us some ideas of like, what kind of numbers are we talking? Like, you talk about 20 million views on this platform and whatever. Like, how much can a personal brand business at your stage actually be generating? Like, is it worthwhile?
Yes, is the answer.
Right, cool. Well, we can go home then. Like,
I suppose a good point there is Stephen Bartlett and Jay Shetty. It's an interesting point, right? Because they didn't just become what they are. They like ground their way up, but you just forget about their grind. So like, I was building an agency at the same time as Steve Bartlett. And obviously I actually followed Jay Shetty on Facebook back in the day. And those two were like the two that posted the most memes on those channels that you've ever seen. And then they were doing loads of paid advertising to grow their brands. So those guys are perfect examples of, in my mind anyway, they gained loads of attention. They kind of productized it into their podcasts and their books and so forth. And then they used it to, as another lever to grow the brand even more. And so they are now like media outlets. And so they are personal brand businesses in its most basic form, And so for me, I look at those guys as inspiration. I think what they've done is awesome. I mean, I don't necessarily know that much about both their controversies, but I think that the way they've built their brands is fascinating and interesting. And no matter how much negativity there ever will be, they've actually helped loads of people. So I think there's great things there. So for me, I suppose the most obvious thing, if I think about personal brand monetization, which people get super excited about immediately, and entrepreneurs get super excited, you need to be doing quite well, is the short answer. If you're thinking about B2B leads and interest for your business and stuff that's not directly, money, then you can gain great value immediately. But if you're thinking about actual monetary value, the base level is what the platforms will pay you. So what YouTube and TikTok will pay. So for example, on TikTok consistently, no matter what, every month, it will pay 10 grand or something similar every single month. And that's just the views that you get for doing the content you would have done otherwise. So when they released that program, I remember being like, absolutely amazing. Like, that is just revenue. And the best thing about that is for young creators or new creators, you can, as a 21-year-old right now, make double, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times an average salary in London posting TikToks. I think that's absolutely insane. It's the same thing with YouTube. YouTube's monetization is amazing. Same with Facebook. And so that's sort of step one. Step two would be, say, sponsorship. So brands being like, wow, they get that many views. If the brand had to buy the views, what would it cost them? Therefore, I'll invest in this influencer. You will know this. You obviously run a B2C company. You will pay influencers, or maybe you don't, but you'll give them product. There's some sort of relationship with influencers. And so it's the same with me. So, if a big bank in the UK wants to do, B2B business banking, and I've banked with them for 10 years anyway, and they go, Chris gets 35 million views a week, and he's an authentic business person, isn't he the perfect advert? Really? I mean, that's the truth. So my business has the platform fees, which you could say is like £250,000 a year, maybe, which just comes from what I do. And then you get the sponsorship fees. So big brands will pay me, let's say that's another, depending on the time of year, but $500,000 for sponsorships just throughout the year with brands I work with. So the next one would be consultancy. So people getting in touch with you, whether it's a brand or an individual, and saying, I want to pay you for your time. I do it very occasionally, and I do it a lot of the time to hone the fact that I'm trying to write about how personal brand can teach. And so can I, do I practice what I preach? Can I turn someone with no audience into someone with hundreds of thousands of followers in a couple of months? I know I can. I do it all the time. And so for me, that's like one level. I don't go that deep on that because, again, I run a big business. And so you have to do the time trade-off. And the last one is, can you build products, as in productize your services. So, you know, I don't do that yet, but will I release a book in the future? Hopefully. Will I have a you know, a podcast or a show that can be bought in the future? Hopefully at some point. And the last thing is, can I productize something that can sell infinitely? So a course or some sort of structured learning as to, you know, how you run your, you know, your peak life or whatever it might be, you know? So those are the different levels I think people can make money. And you know, a good example would be, you know, Jay Shetty or Stephen Bartlett. Like, they have courses, podcasts, books, products, and so forth. So they've taken it to the nth degree. And I think that if you think about what a celebrity really is, it's basically the same thing. You know, the Kardashians are quite literally the perfect example of everything is downstream from attention, because they can start any business they want, and they have business managers now. I've forgotten the name of the lady, but she's incredible.
Emma Greedy?
Yes.
Yeah.
Any business they touch now just gets millions and millions of followers and likes and engagement and sales the next day. And so, you know, if you run a business, at some point you might not run that business anymore. And so I think that personal brand will deliver unbelievably outsized return for your business now. It will help you become more articulate, more considered, more thoughtful. But also it will give you this unbelievable leverage on the rest of your life, which it's what I always think is interesting, is that I think there's a point where you can get to where you make more than a small business as an individual. And I think that's quite a rare pursuit.
I think there's something important as well, which is that in a world of AI where skills do get commoditized a lot, personality is an enormous leverage point. Like, just having a personality, being a trustable, authentic source as a human being. Like, that's something that you can't just stick in an algorithm.
Absolutely. And that's going to happen more and more and more every single day. Everything that we do, as you've seen as we progress in our entrepreneurial lives, things are commoditized. Things that used to be so valuable. I mean, I spent 7 years of my Verb life building websites that now, honestly, an AI would build better. And so you just think to yourself, what are the skills that are not ever going to go out of fashion? Are not going to go out of fashion, but that will never lose value. And I think this is one of those places where, you know, you just get infinite value from, you know, if you build an audience, it's there. As long as you engage it, it can only really serve you in the future.
I think that's the other thing. So there's building an audience, and then there's engaging with your community. So how to make sure that you're keeping that system going in like a good, structured, systemized way. So you talk about building a business. It's gone to like, you know, £1 million a year, let's call it. Sounds roughly in the ballpark.
Yeah.
Who is in that business to help you run £1 million a year? Or are you just like paying someone 50k and pocketing 950 and just fucking DMing everyone back all the time? Like, what is the actual system you have in place that you're not 24/7 on this?
So I have
the wealthiest and unhappiest, busiest man in the world.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say these days that I'm overly busy. Like, I would say that because of the fact that you don't need that many sponsors to pay you that type of money, it just means that you do have this idea of outsized. It's outsized because you have the audience. So it doesn't mean you're working harder for the money. It means you're working less hard for the money. And so with me, the system is I have 2 full-time staff. One predominantly works on editorial and one predominantly works on video, but they run everything. The work I do with them is about idea generation, what we want to talk about, what's important to us, what's our messaging. And so they manage the creation and execution of the content. I approve it still, of course. But I mean, I would be surprised if I put more than 8 hours a week into personal brand, because I certainly don't put a full day in, and it's spread out across the week. So I will do filming in batches. So every 2 or 3 weeks, I'll do a 6-hour shoot. And therefore, if you think about it as a business, you have to be super prepared for everything you're going to talk about, really well scripted, really well researched. If you turn up on the day without what you're going to do, you're going to waste the whole day. Whereas I think that like one of my superpowers is I am very, very, very efficient when I'm working. Otherwise, I'm useless. But when I'm actually working, I'd say the output for the time we dedicate is very, very good. And they know that I run a business, and they know that I won't be there the whole time.
Okay, so you've talked about the importance of getting people off platform. You call it deplatforming them, which is a bit extreme, but okay, we're deplatforming people onto email lists. How do you do that well? How do you build a great email list? And how do you like set up that system so it's not really draining to you as well? What are you writing about?
So I'll take the example that if someone is regularly already posting on LinkedIn, then starting a newsletter is actually so straightforward. Setting it up, even if you're not techie, is very, very easy to just go onto ConvertKit or Beehive and click set up and so forth. And it will basically spit you out a holding page. How do you get people to subscribe is a great question, because it's the thing that I think about the most. So publishers, products, services, businesses, consultancy, anything you do in the future, you will sell the most of it and get the most engagement through a newsletter. It's wild that that's still the case, but people feel like they're following you on a deeper level if they're subscribing to a newsletter. And so I only started one super late. I started mine 6 months ago because I have a few friends who are, huge newsletters, and again, gives them huge leverage again. And so I think to myself, well, I was going to go full and really deep on the newsletter. So I now create a lot of content that is exclusive to the newsletter. So if you want step-by-step breakdowns of how I do it, it's called step-by-step. It's like, this is how you achieve this thing. This is how you get from A to B. Whereas a lot of the other content can't be that detailed online. And so it's more like an instructional how you achieve these things. And then the engagement is every single week I'll answer questions in the newsletter. I'll show you the question and then I'll answer the question. And people love that. And I've spent £0 on scaling the newsletter, and I'm just under 100,000 subscribers now. So I'm going to try and scale that this year will be my focus. But, the audience, if I have a video that goes viral, I will see a spike in my newsletter subs. It will be small. If I have something that goes viral on LinkedIn and there's like a lead magnet or a downloadable or something, a part 2 coming, that's always a clever thing to do, I'll get huge thousands of subscribers in a day. And to achieve that with paid media is so expensive. I think on average, people think $2.50 to $3 per subscriber to acquire them. So if you have a good social media funnel, you can achieve great, newsletter growth.
So, everything is downstream from attention, but really everything is kind of downstream from finding your voice, your niche, your audience, and the reason why you should be posting and you have the authority. And if you can get those things right, judging by everything you've said, that sounds like you've said, the funnel can start to work. There's sort of no point starting the wrong way around with that.
Yeah. And it's like I said, I have helped a lot of people go from near zero to hundreds of thousands of followers. And you can follow a path. Like you're going to have to be very dedicated to it. You have to put in quite a lot of time. But as long as you realize that if you're doing it for a business reason, it's the most proven thing in the world. Most proven thing that people want to buy from people. It's such a cliche, but obviously it's true. So if you dedicate yourself to it, you can get 50 to 100,000 followers quite quickly. You have to really work hard at it though. And you have to really create, quite in-depth content every single day. But if you do it like I do it and you batch it and you think about it as a business, it just becomes your marketing funnel for your business. And for me, it's just my funnel for everything now.
So if you could leave listeners with one piece of advice based on everything that you've shared today, what is your top advice for people that want to build a personal brand?
The main takeaway, and I will say this to anyone that ever asks, is it is not a zero-sum game. Like, you do not have to fail for me to be successful. And therefore, surround yourself with people doing it. Commit to the fact that I actually really want my friends to do well. And I think it's rare that someone, who has an audience like mine spends so much time helping other people grow. And it's because I'm always like, I don't know why people pull up the ladder. Because again, if you succeed loads and we're friends and we sort of engage each other and work with each other, I'm going to succeed more because of it. And so I think people need to drop ego when they're doing personal brand, which seems so crazy considering it's so inherently egotistical, but it's not zero sum. So I would just say, get good people around you.
More win and help win. Amazing. Chris, thank you so much for joining us on Secret Leaders.
Thank you.